Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. I'm really excited you're joining us because today we are looking at something that, well, I think anyone who has ever tried to learn a new language has struggled with.
Oh, absolutely. It is a completely universal frustration.
Right. So imagine you're sitting in this, fast-paced meeting, or maybe you're just hanging out at a bustling coffee shop with friends.
Just a normal, loud environment.
Exactly. And the conversation is flowing, people are laughing, and suddenly someone asks you a direct question. And in your native language, you know exactly what you want to say.
The thought is just right there.
Yeah, it's perfectly formed, it's sharp, ready to go. But you are speaking a new language. So you have to, start up the internal machinery.
Which is exhausting.
It is. You grab the thought, run it through your mental dictionary, you check the grammar rules, assemble the sentence, and finally you open your mouth to speak. But the conversation, it's already moved on.
Yeah, they're on to the next topic.
Exactly. The moment has just completely passed you by. And that agonizing delay, that's what we call the translation trap.
It's a great term for it, and it's a profound shift, in how we have to approach language.
Right.
Because that feeling of being 10 seconds behind everyone else in a room, it's incredible isolating. You're physically present, but linguistically, you're just caught in this time warp.
So true. So today, our mission is to uncover a highly practical, grammar book-free method to help you bypass that trap entirely.
Yeah, and we're pulling this from a really brilliant dialogue excerpt in The Speaking Circle.
Yes, The Speaking Circle.
Right.
And the goal here is to get into the real-world mechanics of thinking directly in English. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
The dialogue we're looking at, it diagnoses the problem by looking at our default instinct as language learners.
Right, the automatic reflex.
Yeah. When you want to say something in English, your brain's first reflex is to generate the thought in your native language. And the source uses Hindi as the example here.
Which is a perfect example to illustrate the mechanics of this.
Exactly. So say you feel hunger, your brain immediately fires off, "Mujhe bhukh lagi hai," or, you want to leave a party, and the thought arrives as "Mujhe ab ghar jana hai."
Right. You have the feeling, you generate the Hindi sentence, and then you have to actively translate that exact sentence into English.
And then, only then, do you actually speak. I mean, it's a multi-stage manufacturing process for every single sentence you try to drop into a casual conversation.
What's fascinating here is just the sheer cognitive overload this two-step process creates.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, we really underestimate how much neurological energy translation requires.
Because it feels automatic to us, right?
Well, it feels like what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
The underlying argument in The Speaking Circle is that, sure, translation is an essential crutch when you're first, building basic vocabulary.
Like when you're told beginner.
Exactly. But eventually, it morphs into this massive roadblock. If you want to speak naturally and at pace, translation actively hinders you.
Because you're doing too much at once.
Precisely. It forces your brain to juggle two entirely different linguistic systems at the exact same time.
It makes me think of trying to stream a high-definition video on a terrible internet connection.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Right. You click play, and you just sit there watching that little spinning wheel, just buffering.
Yes, that is a perfect analogy.
And by the time your mental translation of "I need to go home now" has finally finished buffering and is ready to be spoken, the real-time conversation has left you in the dust.
You're completely out of sync.
Yeah. You're trying to play catch-up with a live event, but you're using a delayed broadcast.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. You are essentially running two operating systems simultaneously.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is. You have the syntax, the vocabulary structure, the cultural context of your native language, and it is directly clashing with the rules of English.
And a real conversation doesn't wait for you to sort that out.
No, real-time communication happens in milliseconds. It relies on rapid-fire conceptual memory.
Right.
If you introduce a lexical middleman, meaning your brain has to fetch the Hindi words, hold them in working memory, fetch the English equivalents, and swap them out, you will always have that lag.
Always.
Always. To achieve natural speed, the brain needs to connect the raw concept directly with English words, entirely bypassing the native language infrastructure.
Okay, but this brings up a pretty massive contradiction, I think.
Oh, how so?
Well, if the translation trap is the core problem, then the obvious cure is to just think in English.
Right.
But how do you actually do that?
Right.
Wait, how do I build a house if I don't have all the bricks?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, if my vocabulary is limited and my grammar is still a bit shaky, wouldn't trying to think entirely in a new language just result in an immediate mental crash.
It feels like trying to run before you even know how to crawl.
Exactly. If I'm still learning, isn't thinking in English literally impossible?
It sounds like a paradox, and honestly, it is the exact fear that keeps people clinging to the safety of translation.
It's a safety blanket.
It really is. We walk around with this ingrained misconception that thinking in a new language is the final reward. Like, you only unlock it after you have achieved perfect, flawless mastery.
Like it's the final boss of language learning.
Right, but the speaking circle flips that entirely. Thinking in English isn't the finish line you cross after mastering the language. It is the fundamental tool you use to build that mastery.
Let's see if I'm getting this. It's like walking into a kitchen and looking in the fridge.
Okay, I like where this is going.
And you only have eggs, butter, and bread. You don't just stand there paralyzed because you don't have the ingredients for a Michelin star souffle.
No, you definitely don't.
You just make a fried egg sandwich. You use the limited ingredients you actually have on hand to make something functional right now, rather than waiting until your pantry is perfectly stocked.
Precisely. You don't need an expansive, sophisticated vocabulary to start the process. The dialogue introduces this concept of microthoughts.
Microthoughts.
Yeah. It is not about composing complex philosophical arguments in your head.
Thank goodness.
Right. It's about swapping out a tiny foundational native thought for a simple English one. You take the most basic, repetitive thoughts of your daily life, and you just change the language they arrive in.
So going back to the examples they used in the source, instead of running that whole internal monologue of feeling hungry, thinking, "Mujhe bhuk lagi hai," recognizing that translates to hunger, and building the English sentence.
Yes, instead of all that friction.
You train your brain to just bypass the Hindi completely. You feel a sensation in your stomach, and you just think, "I'm hungry."
Exactly.
Or instead of the complex mental gymnastics for wanting to leave a party, you just train the micro-thought, "I need to go home now."
It is entirely about lowering the barrier to entry. When we tell someone, hey, think in English, their mind immediately jumps to narrating an entire hour-long documentary in their head.
Which is terrifying.
It's intimidating and totally unsustainable. What is being suggested here is giving yourself permission to be beautifully basic.
Beautifully basic. I love that.
You're replacing the foundational thoughts that just loop in your head all day anyway. Every time you swap a Hindi microthought for an English one, you are laying down a new neural pathway.
Even if it's super simple.
Even if that pathway is incredibly short at first, the point is that it is direct.
So what does this all mean for someone listening right now who wants to actually put this into practice?
Well, the application is the best part.
Because the most appealing part of this approach, to me at least, is that it completely eliminates the need for formal, sit-down study time.
Yes, no textbooks required.
Right. The idea of carving out an hour a day for a grammar workbook is just daunting for most of us. But with this method, your daily life, your kitchen, your morning commute, your living room, that literally becomes the classroom.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are diving into the mechanics of direct association.
Direct association. Break that down for us.
The technique laid out is to look at everyday objects in your immediate environment and intentionally block the native language from entering your mind.
So no translating the object first.
Right. You look at a bottle on your desk, you don't look at it, think of the Hindi word for bottle, and then translate it. You simply look at the physical object, hold it in your hand, and think, this is a bottle.
Oh, wow. So if you're like patting your pockets, frantically looking for your phone.
Which we all do daily.
Yeah. Instead of the native panic thought, you just force the English thought, where's my phone?
Exactly. Or if you hit that classic mid-afternoon energy slump, you don't translate your fatigue. You just think, I'm really tired, or, I need some coffee.
The goal here seems deeply physiological, honestly.
It is. You are actively trying to wire your brain to connect sensory input, the physical feeling of holding the bottle, the sensation of being tired, the visual of a messy desk directly to an English label.
You're cutting the native language bridge completely out of the cognitive map.
Exactly. And through repetition, that direct connection between the physical world and the English word becomes the path of least resistance for your brain.
Okay, wait, but how does direct association work if my mind just goes entirely blank?
The dreaded mental blank.
Yeah, say I'm looking at something, I know the concept perfectly well, I know the Hindi word, but the English word is simply not there in my mental database.
It happens to everyone.
Doesn't the whole direct association system just crash right there? I mean, if I don't know the English word for a specific object, I can't directly associated.
It is the ultimate nightmare scenario for any language learner.
It really is.
The dropped word. The blank space right in the middle of a sentence. And the natural instinct in that moment of panic is to freeze up, apologize profusely, and, pull out a translation app on your phone to find the exact noun.
Because if you don't know the word, you can't finish the thought, right?
Well, that's what we tend to believe.
But doesn't talking around it make me sound silly? Like if I just guess or try to describe it, aren't I reinforcing bad habits? Shouldn't I just stop and look it up to make sure I'm actually learning the correct vocabulary?
That instinct to stop and look it up is exactly what the speaking circle pushes back against.
Really?
Yes. They address this fear head on and offer a brilliant, highly functional workaround. And it's simply description.
Okay, how does that work in practice?
The example used in the dialogue is fantastic. Suppose you are looking outside, it's pouring rain, and you realize you have completely forgotten the English word for umbrella.
Oh, that's a good one.
You have the concept, but the label is totally gone. The advice is to simply describe its function. You say, the thing I use when it rains.
The thing I use when it rains. I mean, it's incredibly simple, and it totally bypasses the need for a dictionary.
Exactly.
But honestly, doesn't that make you sound a bit clumsy in a real conversation?
It might feel clumsy to the perfectionist part of your brain, the part that wants to sound like a native speaker at all times.
Right, the ego.
Exactly. But it is actually the hallmark of a highly effective communicator. This concept fundamentally redefines what fluency actually means.
How so?
Well, we have this false equivalence where we think fluency equals having a perfect, exhaustive dictionary downloaded into our heads. We think it means never hesitating and always knowing the exact right noun for every single situation.
That's so true. We view any missing word as a total failure of fluency.
But the argument presented here is that true fluency is not about knowing every single word.
What is it then?
True fluency is the ability to maintain the momentum of a conversation, even when you lack a piece of vocabulary.
Oh, I see.
By describing the object, saying, the thing I use when it rains, instead of freezing in silence trying to excavate the word umbrella from your memory, you maintain the English thought process.
You don't break the flow.
Right. You haven't reverted to your native language to search for a translation. You encountered an English problem and you solved it using English tools.
That makes a lot of sense.
That is true fluency in action. You kept the communication alive and unbroken.
That completely changes the goalposts. You're giving yourself permission to talk around the missing piece of the puzzle rather than throwing a whole puzzle on the floor in frustration.
I love that image, yes.
The goal shifts from perfect grammatical accuracy to just, unbroken momentum.
Momentum is everything.
So if the goal is unbroken communication, how do we actually practice that momentum if we don't have a speaking partner readily available?
That is exactly why the dialogue culminates in a specific, actionable blueprint. They call it the 7-day mental challenge.
The 7-day mental challenge.
Yes. They don't just leave the listener with abstract theory about microthoughts and the umbrella trick. They provide a practical framework to build the habit.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the parameters of this challenge are wonderfully low stakes.
Very low stakes.
For just 5 minutes a day, over the next 7 days, the challenge is to describe your daily, mundane actions inside your head using simple English sentences.
Just narrating the incredibly basic things you do on autopilot.
Eating breakfast, walking down the street, traveling on the bus, cooking dinner, getting ready in the morning.
The text gives a great, highly relatable example for this.
What is it?
You're holding your headphones, getting ready to listen to something, and you just think to yourself, these are my headphones. I use them every day.
So simple.
Or, as they cheekily suggest in the source, you can think, I am watching The Speaking Circle.
Of course, they slip that in there.
Yep.
But this is so practical. We aren't asking anyone to block out an hour of intense grammar drills or to hire an expensive tutor.
Not all.
It is just 5 minutes of consistent daily practice, utilizing the idle moments of your day. But the argument is that this short, consistent mental exercise is enough to actually start rewiring how the brain processes language.
This raises an important question about how we typically approach learning versus how the brain actually forms habits.
Right. We tend to overcomplicate it.
We really do. We've been conditioned to believe that learning requires intense, agonizing, prolonged effort.
Like if it's not hurting, it's not working.
Exactly. But there is a crucial distinction made here in the source. Your primary goal during this challenge is English thinking, not perfect English grammar.
That's a relief.
The text explicitly says, don't worry about making mistakes. Your first goal is not perfect English.
That distinction is everything. I mean, it completely relieves the pressure.
It removes the paralysis.
Yeah, because if you wake up and your goal is perfect grammar, you're going to overthink and freeze.
Every time.
But if your goal is simply to generate a flow of English thoughts, no matter how basic or flawed they are, you will actually start communicating.
Consistency and establishing a mental habit will trump intense, isolated study sessions every single time.
5 minutes a day beats a 3-hour Sunday cram session.
Oh, without a doubt. Engaging in this internal narration for 5 minutes while you make your morning coffee every single day will yield significantly better practical speaking results than cramming vocabulary flashcards for hours on a weekend.
Why is that, neurologically speaking?
Because you are training the exact cognitive muscle you need for live conversation. The spontaneous, direct generation of English concepts.
Right.
You are teaching your brain that English is a tool for interacting with the immediate world, not just a subject to be studied in a vacuum.
So, to bring all of this together for you listening right now, if you have ever felt trapped by that agonizing translation lag,
where your native thoughts are buffering.
Right, buffering while the English conversation just races ahead without you, this approach gives you the exact toolkit to break free.
It really is.
First, you have to stop the translation buffering by accepting that you don't need perfect English to start thinking in English.
Swap out those native micro thoughts for simple English ones.
You use the ingredients you already have in the fridge.
Exactly.
Second, lean into the direct association technique. Let your physical environment become your flashcards.
Connect the physical objects on your desk or the physical feelings in your body directly to English words.
Without the native language bridge. And third, embrace the umbrella trick.
Yes, my favorite part.
When you inevitably forget a word, and you will do not freeze and do not pull out a dictionary app to translate.
Describe the function of the object. The thing I use when it rains.
Prioritize conversational momentum and unbroken communication over vocabulary perfection.
Absolutely.
And finally, take on that 7-day challenge. Turn your daily routine into a 5-minute mental classroom. Narrate your mundane life. I am drinking coffee. I am opening the door. I am walking to the car.
It is the ultimate shortcut to speaking naturally, completely removing the stress of perfectionism.
It gets you out of the theoretical grammar workbook and into the real world of spontaneous communication.
You know, as you embark on this 7-day challenge, there is a really fascinating psychological layer to consider here.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we know from cognitive science that language isn't just a neutral system for labeling things. It fundamentally shapes how we structure our thoughts, how we categorize our experiences, and how we build our worldview.
Right. Language shapes reality.
Exactly. So if you've spent your entire life using your native language to construct your internal reality, what actually happens to your inner voice when you spend 5 minutes every day narrating your life in a completely different language?
Wow. Never thought about that.
As you practice this direct association and bypass your native tongue, you might find that thinking in English doesn't just change how quickly you speak. It might subtly shift the very way you perceive the world around you.
That is an incredible thing to pay attention to as you start narrating your day. It's not just adopting a new language. It might actually be adopting a slightly new lens on reality.
It's a powerful exercise.
So step away from the buffering wheel, drop the translation middleman, and just start thinking. Keep practicing, keep the momentum going, and the natural speaking will absolutely follow. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.